All anybody's talking about right now is AI. Just a reminder that the A in AI stands for artificial. It is not real intelligence. It is fake intelligence. And today we're going to discover when it makes sense to use AI and when it doesn't. You know, years and years ago, we started eating fake food. And the result is we have a lot of overweight people in the United States eating fake food. My fear is that we're going to have a lot of dumb people because of using fake intelligence. So with us today is our guest, Marcio Barreto. Marcio, thank you for joining us on the Wealthability Show to talk about the good and the bad of AI.
Well, thanks for having me, Tom. Glad to be here.
So if you would, give us a little of your background, how you got into the AI world.
Very good, very good. So I'm a finance professional. I spent a lot of my career in manufacturing environments, seeing shop floors, and that's where I first got involved into lean and optimization, and that's what got me involved in all of this. So I started this journey first observing optimization of factory floor and how successful organization really took these concepts of cutting waste and optimizing efficiency. But what struck me is that when you moved out of factory floors and into business, into finance environments, there wasn't as much focus on that. A lot of the organizations, they had beautiful dashboards, beautiful reports, everything was green. And yet, a lot of these organizations, they were really dashboarding themselves into financial ruin. I saw a lot of great finance professionals working 50, 60, 70 hours, and yet they were just chasing data and producing reports that either nobody was looking, or by the time they got out, the data was already obsolete. And that really what got me to putting together this analysis and this book, which was Lean and AI for Finance, on how to optimize and how to address this problem.
All right, so finance, AI and finance. So here's what I found, and I want your take on it. What I found is that AI is really just a bunch of data. That's all it is. It is not, there is literally no intelligence there. It is just a bunch of information. And how we gather that information determines whether we're actually gathering an accurate answer to our question or a false answer to our question. I found that as a professional in the tax world, as a professional advisor, I ask AI a question, I get really good answers. But I find when my clients ask questions, they get really stupid answers. So how do you, if we can, let's start with that. Because you're talking about, you know, how small businesses might use AI products and what AI products to use. But how should we be using AI in the first place? Because what I want to address here is, when is it a good time to use AI and when it is a bad time to use AI? Because I've seen a lot of bad results, frankly, come from using AI. Incorrect information is always worse than no information. And I feel like we got stupid with Google and we're just getting stupider with AI. And so how do we use that, Marcio?
So AI can be an incredibly powerful tool if you use it correctly. But if you use it incorrectly, like you said, it can really produce dangerous results. I think the problem is that a lot of people, a lot of organizations, they're treating AI as the silver bullet that can do everything. It can replace everyone, and it's just going to magically solve all our problems and replace everyone and everything. And that's really not what it does. They're trying to substitute human judgment with machine judgment. And then you get all kinds of machine hallucinations and things like that, and weird results. That's really not what it does. At least not today. That's not what it does. What it's really good for, it's to replace all these repetitive tasks.
Okay.
pattern recognition, variance analysis, all these tasks that for us humans, takes a lot of time to sort through these large amounts of data, just trying to analyze and identifying trends. That is really good for. And then it can save a lot of time for people. And then it frees our time to do what we're actually good at, which is applying our judgment to things and adding value. So when you do it this way, then it's an incredibly powerful tool. If you try to substitute human judgment, then you're going to fail.
Yeah. So one example for that I've seen that I think is a nice way to use it is I've seen there's a company that uses AI to enter your bookkeeping actually from your bank into QuickBooks. While QuickBooks will do that, it's not always that good, and so it's a little frustrating. But AI, we can train AI so that it can do those repetitive tasks. But what we can't do, in my opinion, is we can't say, well, then the books are accurate, because that just means the bookkeeping's in there. But that doesn't mean they're accurate. We still have to use our judgment and say, hey, that's really an asset, not an expense, or that's really a liability, not income, right? And so we actually have to use our own judgment there, and we can't substitute AI for judgment. I think that's a really good way to put it. So, all right. So then let's start with big case. What would be a case that a small business might want to use AI?
So there's a small business can use for a lot of these small repetitive things. And I'll give you an example that even my wife is a nurse practitioner. Couldn't be further away from a finance person. And she actually support me. She picked up a copy of my book and passed it along to her partners. They're all doctors and nurse practitioners. And now they all jokingly blame me because once you start applying AI to try to find these patterns, these trends into their numbers, then it becomes like, where's Waldo? Once you see these wastes, once you see these inefficiencies, you can't unsee them anymore. So digging through these massive amounts of data, trying to identify like, hey, your trend is pointing this way. I see things pointing the wrong way here. Things that sometimes it's kind of hard for us to notice in large amounts of numbers. AI is really good at doing this. We can do it. It just takes a lot of time, and sometimes time is at a premium for us. So AI, especially for small business, can be a really powerful tool in saving time.
Well, I want to get a little specific here, if that's okay. Give me an example of a tool that would do that. I mean, it's one thing. We all know ChatGPT, or we may know Perplexity or something like that, where it's really Google on steroids. Okay, but how do we, are there specific tools that we can say, hey, this tool that somebody has come up with this tool, they've used all the big data, right, to get the information, but to actually do that sorting, or do we have to go to a really general use tool like ChatGPT for it?
Well, it depends on what you're trying to use. There's more and more companies coming up with specific applications of AI. Call it like for expense reports, there's companies that are identifying trends in expense, but even the generic ones, Copilot, Gemini, and ChatGPT, if you're trying to identify trends in billings, are things getting better, things getting worse, and you got a report with 20,000 lines, and you're trying to identify what's going on here. Even the generic ones, they can sort through that data certainly a lot faster than we can. But for specific businesses, there's a lot of these companies are popping up every day. I mean, there's companies that came up yesterday that we don't even know about today. So the business is changing very, very fast in that sense, with more and more specific applications.
So walk us through how you would do that. So you'd plug in, you'd plug in your data, maybe your general ledger, for example, in here for the last 3 years, right? You say, okay, run this analysis for me. But the challenge, of course, is you have to be so clear on what the analysis you want run, because you will get, there's a lot of false positives in there.
Exactly. You could, for example, say, hey, here are my sales for the last 24 months. You know, here's my whatever inputs I have. Here's what I'm seeing in the market. What do you believe? What can I forecast for the next 12 months? Now, the answer is not going to be perfect. You still have to analyze that and fine tune that based on what you know. But well, that's going to save you time and not have to create something from scratch. Absolutely. That's gonna create a baseline then for you to improve on. So those sort of things that's the sort of legwork that AI can do to help and really save time.
So it seems to me like, if you know what questions to ask, it's good to ask those questions. But if you don't know questions to ask, sometimes even asking AI what questions to ask, it's not going to give you the right question. So it seems to me like if you know your business well, which most all business owners do know their business, then we can ask those really what I'd call professional questions of AI. But without knowing how to ask the professional questions, maybe we need to find somebody who can ask those questions. Is that fair?
That is fair. The more inputs you give and the more parameters you give, the better answer you're going to get because the computer will always spit out something for you.
Right.
And if you just ask, hey, how many cars will be sold in 2059, it'll give you a number. Based on what? I'm not too sure. But if you fine tune the parameters, well, then you're going to get better and better based answers.
Got it. So now there's a lot of talking about softwares that are popping up. There's a lot of AI agents popping out. So what's the difference between an agent, say, in Chat GPT? So how do you use an agent differently, and what's the benefit of an agent versus a generic learning system?
Well, an agent really can do things in parallel. You can tell an agent, hey, please research this. Once you research this, then execute this. And based on the results of this execution, then do something else. And again, it depends on how well you program these things. So it's not as easy as go do something for me. So it's not as easy as sending off your intern on a task. So you do have to have very specific instructions and parameters. But the beauty of an agent is that it can do several things on the background while you focus on something else, and you can cascade things. Once you're done with this, go do something else.
Okay, so walk us through that. I think a lot of business owners, we keep hearing AI. We've had probably 10 different guests about AI on this podcast. Um, so walk us through, because you talk about programming, and that just scares the daylights out of people, right? So can you back up a little and go, does that mean that the owner has to spend time programming this AI, or are there other people who do that, or are there programs that do that? Kind of walk us through how, because to me, that sounds like a lot of work.
Can do. Now the advantage is that in AI, you have its own teacher. The system itself can help you, guide you through the steps. You can ask for help into how to create the prompt. So you can tell it, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you help me create a prompt so that I can tell you how to execute it? So you can actually ask for help in how to tell it how to do a job. Now, is it extremely simple that you can just sit down and do it in 2 minutes? Maybe not. Maybe it does take a little bit of patience and a little bit of try and error, especially when you're doing an agent and you're trying to program several tasks in a row. But is it impossible? Does it take a PhD? Absolutely not. It's something that with a few try and error in a couple hours, you can definitely
Or maybe it's
do
cheaper to just hire an intern to go do
it.
right? So when you talk about AI in finance, how do you use it? So what are you using it for finance outside of identifying trends?
So AI, we're in finance, we're used to dealing with thousands of lines. You're talking about all these lines of P&Ls and billings, and it's really about how you're managing all these metadatas and trying to peek around the corner. I think finance in the 21st century it's not about explaining the past, right? When you think about traditionally, people will ask, how are we doing? And they would say, well, this is how we did it, and show a P&L. Now it's all about how can we translate this into insights for decision making into the future. So how do we peek around the corner? How do we identify trends so we can act while there's still time to act? And to do that is trying to identify things before it's too late. And I think that's where AI can really help by either to identify signals in the market and signals in the competitor, things where is the industry headed, so we can move the business before a competition, or being able to be fast enough not to lose sales, not to lose market share. And for that, I think AI is being incredibly helpful, incredibly powerful tool, because it's really saving us time. It's moving our finance teams from spending time just gathering data to publish reports to really analyzing and applying judgment to data. So it's not that the team is doing less, but it's moving from more doing what needs to be done to what a value creating activity that can be done.
So trends and patterns is you think is what it's particularly good at, is identifying those trends and patterns. Once we identify those trends and patterns, of course, then we can make our judgment. But
Right.
I think one of my points here is that probably best not to let AI make that judgment
Correct.
on those trends, because we're the ones we know the reality is that AI might be able to identify the trends and the patterns, but we do know the industry better than AI, because humans have a sense of things that AI doesn't have. AI just only has data, right? So we're looking for, okay, what's that data that would really support and give us legs for making a good decision? Is that
That,
track?
that's perfectly fair. We don't let machine judgment replace human judgment. Absolutely.
Okay, so you talked earlier about using it for projections and forecasting. So kind of what steps would you walk through for that? So are you identifying the trends first, and then you go, okay, now I agree with these trends, because you might see trends you go, this makes no sense to me. Like I said, I mean, I think AI produces false data as often as it produces good data. So we have to be careful and make sure, hey, this does make sense. And then we can have a forecast, but seems to me, and sounds to me from what you're saying, that we still have to put real clear parameters about what it's forecasting, and what can we ask it, for example, all right, well, forecast this given this happens in the world.
Absolutely. You can say, for example, hey, please, here's my historicals. Here's what's going on in the industry. There's an expectation, for example, that interest rates are coming down or going up. There's an expectation that this is going to happen, or this competitor is going to move this. Forecast the impact of this into my order taking, into my sales. And then you can look at the results. Now, I'm not saying take this and sign off on it, but we can take this and analyze and think, does this make sense? And let me look versus my assumptions and see whether I agree with this or not. Now, you may agree with this, but at least this gives you a good starting point, and a good chunk of the legwork is already done. And then you can fine tune.
Okay, I get it. So in your book, you talk about AI and lean. So first of all, because not everybody knows what lean is, can you kind of walk through lean?
Absolutely. Lean is all about cutting waste. Don't do what doesn't add value, and really focus on the value added activities. And going back to the shop floor analysis, lean is really strong on manufacturing. So reducing the amount of motion, reducing the amount of inventory. That's really where it was born. Think about Toyota production, reducing the amount of parts and things like that.
But it could work. It could work similarly in the service industry, right? So reducing how many times you handle a piece of paper, how many times you handle a check, how many times you pick up a file.
it can work. That's the beauty of it. It can work anywhere. And it can work. It's especially powerful in my view in business and in finance. When you think about um, the number of reports you can get and the number of reports that are actually useful to you. I mean, I've seen in business that I've worked, people showing me these beautiful reports that had, indicators for everything. And I asked them, okay, but which ones are actually useful to you? And it was only a fraction of those. So all the time that they spent creating these reports that were useful to nobody, that's just waste. That's just, time that people spent creating these things that's just wasted. And it's not because the people were bad. They were just doing something that they didn't know wasn't going to be used for, and it could be used for something else. So lean is about identifying all these things that are being wasted or that end up getting reworked. If you create something and then you have to go back because something was wrong, hey, that's waste as well. So it's identifying all those flaws, all those opportunities for improvement, and getting down to what actually drives value to you, to your customers, and just focusing on that and doing more with less, and doing more valuable things with less. That's what lean is all about.
Okay, so now let's add AI into lean. So how do you suggest that AI can actually work with the lean principles?
That's when it becomes really powerful, because now you're taking all those activities that have to be done but really by nature don't add value, like managing large amounts of data or just creating a report. Creating a report by nature doesn't add value to anybody. It has to be done, but doesn't add value. Well, now we can have a system that can do it for you, and then you can spend your time on something that's much more powerful, which is applying your judgment. So a machine can do the job that has to be done, but doesn't really add anything. And you can focus your time on what actually matters, which is applying judgment. So machine
Oh,
is doing the repetitive, you're doing the judgment
I
portion.
see. I see what you're saying. You're saying that, hey, some of those repetitive tasks, they don't add value, but they're still necessary.
Correct.
And then AI can frequently do that. Give us an example of that.
Well, for example, the job of as we were talking about the forecasting. Well, I gotta forecast my postage costs, for example. Well, that in itself is not fun. Well, I can have a machine do that for me, and that's probably going to be fairly accurate. And then I can focus on, okay, let me talk about my revenue. Let me look at my order intake. Let me talk about my business leaders of what's out there. What are the trends, and not have to waste my time on trying to forecast, how much postage I'm going to spend, in the next year. So it can eliminate all that time that I spent on those repetitive tasks that I still have to do it. Or perhaps I have to prepare a report for an auditor. Now it's just taking data that's in this format and I have to move to this format. Well, let the machine do it. I'm going to focus on something that's much more important that the customer is willing to pay for. So machine can do the repetitive, can find the trends, can find the patterns, and I'll just work on something that's important for my customer, that's important for my business.
Okay, so what would be like in your mind, the top two or three things that a business owner ought to be doing using combining AI with lean principles?
Well, I think for starters, I think lean is incredibly powerful, and I've seen that the successful organizations really believe in it, and they instill in their DNA. The unsuccessful organizations are the ones that they tell their employees should go ahead and do lean. They read about it and they see that it's probably important, so they tell them, hey, go ahead and do it for us, because that gives a short burst of productivity that eventually phases out. So once they believe in it, then that's when they really thrive. So if they're really serious about it, then start small. Pick a process that they believe can be impacted by it, and then start measuring. Is there waste? Is there rework going on? And then start identifying potential opportunities for improvement. Is there repetition going on? Can we improve this through the use of artificial intelligence? Can we measure this? Can we measure success by shortening time? by improving the time that it takes for us to make decisions. If the answer is yes, then you're already in the path of success. Don't think about, hey, how can I deploy this to my entire organization, to my entire business? Start small, because in this area, small wins, they compound very, very quickly. So if you do that, you're in the path to success.
Okay, I like that. Okay, so now I'm gonna return for a second as we finish up to my original question. Is AI just going to make us stupid? And I'm seriously asking because I'm going, okay, I see all these tools. This is great. But like one of the things that I'm concerned about in my profession, for example, is that doing those repetitive tasks is a way that the human mind learns kind of the whole concepts and the thought processes of what goes through it. So, for example, in my world, it might be preparing tax returns, or it might be tying out cash, or things like that. And while yes, AI can do those things, if I let AI do those things and I don't have my staff do those things, does my staff, can they truly leapfrog that and get the basics without having done the basics?
Well, I think that's a very good question. And I believe we have to treat it as a tool, just like other tools out there. I think the computer and the typewriter didn't make us unlearn how to write. The calculator didn't make us unlearn how to do math. And I think AI is just going to be a tool that's going to be around, and we're going to have to, it's going to be part of our
No,
life.
I would tell you, I think the cash register has undone the idea of doing math for a lot of people who run a cash register. They go, I don't have to calculate this. I just have to know how much change is.
But point taken. Although I will contend that with the tool, it can improve our productivity if we use it right. If we use it wrong, then yes, there is a risk. If we use it right, then it can improve our productivity by many times.
So my question is, because of course I see this with my grandchildren, right? Here I am a baby boomer, and my grandchildren are like, their thought process is completely different than mine because they grow up in the age of phones, computers, etc. And my question is, do you think that we can literally do a leapfrog here where we actually leap over all the basics? Like I used to run 4 column, right? I mean, I had to do a 4 column. I know how to do a T account. I know how to put debits on the left, credits on the right. But my question is, do you think that will just all become unnecessary, and that humans and our staff will actually be able to think bigger sooner because they don't have to do the repetitive tasks? Is that a possibility?
I think that's definitely a possibility. I think we're at a transformation stage. We don't know yet the full scope of where this technology is taking us. But just like, as you said, we don't need to know certain skills that we used to need to know 50 years ago. We might not need to know how to do certain things that today we need to. I think time will tell where this technology is going to take us. But I think it can definitely be a tool for good. We just have to use it right.
I love that point. It's up to us to use it the right way, and for us not to be stupid about it, frankly. Okay, let's be smart about how we use AI, what it's good for, what it isn't. That's the lesson that I've learned today. If you want more of this lesson, read Lean for Finance in the Age of AI by our friend Marcio Barreto. Marcio, it's been great having you on the Wealthability Show. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for watching and listening. As we start getting a better idea, and the reason we keep going through AI is because I'm learning, and we're all learning how to use these tools. And what we want to do is, on the one hand, we want to use them and take advantage of them. On the other hand, we don't want to use them in such a way that's going to damage us, our staff, our clients, or anybody else. We want to do it smart. So work smarter, not harder. And when you do, you'll make way more money and pay way less tax. We'll see you next time on the Wealthability Show.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for listening to the Wealthability Show. If today's episode gave you a new perspective, remember this: the tax law is not your enemy. It's a roadmap. And when you know how to follow it, you can build real, lasting wealth. If you're a business owner or investor who's tired of overpaying taxes, the Wealthability Accelerator is your next step. You'll have the opportunity to work directly with me for 80% less than my standard rate. And I'll personally guide you through how to change your facts so that you can change your tax. Go to wealthability.com/bonus and apply today. Remember, it's not just what you make, it's what you keep.
Podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.